Welcome to CBATV News Brief. My name is Wangui Ngugi. The Speaker of the Presidential Palace of the Republic of Somaliland, Mahamudu Assami Jama, responded to the accusations of the leader of the main opposition party, Wadani, on Tuesday towards Somaliland's President, Mr. Muse Bihi Abdi. Mahamudu Assami Jama, who spoke to the press on Wednesday, said Wadani's accusations were unfounded and said that Mr. Iro is covering his constant barriers to have election in his country. The speaker added that Wadani chairman's speech was clear sign that opposition parties are not ready for the upcoming elections. He added that Iro's allegations was based on very cheap debate because election law number 20/2001 section 13 clearly sets out the criteria and procedure for selecting members of the commission and the powers of every branch of the country. He further stated that the president and his government are always ready to hold elections on time. This comes after Somaliland's Wadani party had accused President Muse Bihi of violations of the political agreement on the Electoral Commission that was brokered by the international community in July this year. Abdirahman Iro said his party will withhold the nomination of its member to electoral body until the government rectifies the violations of the nomination process and the agreement of the political parties brokered by the European Union. Wadani alleges the members nominated by the president to the independent electoral body include people affiliated with political parties. The Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of the Representative of Somaliland has received a delegation of independent advocacy group lobbying for recognition of unrecognized states around the world. The delegation had a fruitful meeting with the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of the Representative of Somaliland. These foreign diplomats are not representing any country in the world, but have a powerful lobbying ability that seeks to help unrecognized nations to get recognition from countries around the world and the United Nations. Despite declaring independence in 1991, Somaliland is still considered by many members of the international community as autonomous region of Somalia. The chairperson of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of the Representative, Ahmed Nur Kijande, said the delegation will be helping Somaliland in its pursuit for recognition. The Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of the Representative has not disclosed the name of the group and whether they have the ability to help Somaliland get recognition. It is not clear whether they have helped any state get recognition around the world. Mohamed Muse Dirie, Somaliland's Minister of Information, has appealed to the international community not to waive the Somalia federal government's debt. In a press conference at his office in Hargeisa, the minister also reminded that there is a weapons embargo in effect on Somalia that prohibits Somalia from importing weapons. The minister, Mohamed Muse Dirie, who is also the official spokesperson of the Somaliland government, clarified the government's opposing stance on the ongoing debt relief to Somalia. He said that if Somalia is cleared of debt, it would get the resources to crush regional administrations and disrupt the politics of the Horn of Africa. The Somaliland minister pointed out when the international community throws a little bit of aid to Somalia, the current administration in Mogadishu uses it to interfere with regional governments, and if they have more money, they will try to wreak havoc throughout the region. The Information Minister, Mr. Dirie, also has urged the international community and the African Union not to give weapons to the Somalia federal government and its President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo, whom he claimed that he is willing always to start wars in the entire Horn of Africa region. The minister stated that weapons acquisition by Somalia would endanger Somaliland and the Horn of Africa at large. Somalia's President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo has joined thousands of African leaders to discuss politics and business worth billions of dollars at the first ever Russian-Africa Summit. More than 3,000 delegates from across Russia and Africa are attending this summit that is being held in the Black Sea resort of Sochi. President Farmajo is accompanied by Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Ahmed Isse Awad, his defense counterpart, Hassan Mohammed Amadambe, among other senior officials. The head of state and his delegation were welcomed by Russian officials upon arrival at Sochi International Airport. The two-day event will see more than 3,000 delegates from across Russia and Africa discuss an array of topics from nuclear energy to mineral extraction. This summit represents a significant milestone in Russia's ongoing outreach project to the African continent. Russia's President Putin will be hoping to gain an edge on the other powers vying for influence and commercial opportunities in Africa, including the United States and China. Russia has positioned itself as an alternative to China's massive and intimidating economic clout. Beijing has pumped billions into the continent in recent decades, leaving some leaders worry about the extent of its ambitions. The continent offers Russia many political, economic, and strategic opportunities. Around 60% of the continent's population, which is growing rapidly, is under the age of 25, offering a vast pool of workers, even if many are not yet highly skilled. The continent has abundant natural resources, and since the year 2000, its combined GDP has grown by 5.1% per year on average. In a recent interview with state news agency TASS, Putin said the summit would focus on African solutions to African problems. A total of 2.6 million people in Somalia have been internally displaced amid insecurity, drought, and floods, the United Nations Migration Agency said in a report on Tuesday. Currently, some 5.4 million people out of the 15 million living in the country were estimated as food insecure, while some 2.2 million of the population are living in severe acute food insecurity conditions. The report said more than half of the population in Somalia live under poverty, with the highest poverty rates found in displacement settlements. Largely due to prolonged conflict, Somalia also has a considerable refugee population abroad, nearly 900,000 according to the UNHCR's Global Trend report issued in June 2019. IOM's Chief of Mission in Somalia, Diane Epstein, said the needs are immense, and IOM is working together with the government, communities, and international partners to provide the much-needed support, ensuring their basic needs are met. More than half of the population lives in poverty, with the highest poverty rates found in displacement settlements, with affected populations mainly coming from Lower Shabelle, Bakol, Bay, and Sanag, and heading towards Middle Shabelle and Banadir. In all, the Eastern Horn of Africa region had 8.1 million IDPs and 3.5 million refugees and asylum seekers as at June. Somalia also has a considerable refugee population abroad, nearly 900,000 according to UNHCR's Global Trends report issued in June 2019. Climate change poses serious challenges to current and future peace-building efforts and can amplify conflicts, according to a report on years of devastating violence and drought in Somalia that was released on Wednesday. Researchers at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute looked at how conflicts and the peace-building efforts of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Somalia have been affected by climate change, and found that it amplifies existing challenges and strengthens radical groups. The report shows that the security landscape is changing with climate change. Many of the findings are applicable to other conflicts around the world. According to the report, decades of conflict in Somalia, described as among the most climate vulnerable countries in the world, have been magnified by a series of severe droughts, which adds pressure to the country's state-building process and makes UNSOM's work more challenging in a number of ways. For instance, the frequency and severity of conflicts between herders and farmers in the country's rural regions have increased as changing seasons and weather means herding nomads have to adjust their routes. Droughts and floods also displace more people who seek shelter in camps, which then serve as recruitment grounds for radical groups like Al-Shabaab. The displacement of large groups into new areas can also undermine the governance of those areas, as existing power-sharing agreements no longer represent the demographic composition on the ground. While the report was hesitant to say that climate change by itself could cause conflict, the evidence was clear that climate change increases the probability of conflict and of violence. That's the end of CBN News Bulletin. Keep watching, don't go away. Coming up in a few hours is more and detailed news with Eunice Deco.